So yesterday we talked about rectangles. Okay, and then based on rectangles, we should be able to talk about triangles. Okay, why should we do that? Let's remember the rectangle. Let's say I have a rectangle. Let's say the measurement of my rectangle is 4 by 7. Okay. I know 4 times 7 is 28, so the area of this rectangle will be 28. But let's say I came over and I cut my rectangle in half. Boom, I cut it right there. One thing I want us to see is that the areas, yeah, let me do it right. The areas will be 14 and 14, right? Because remember how it was 28? The whole rectangle was 28, so if I cut it in half, I should separate into 14 and 14. Interesting part, though, is that this half of a rectangle, and I'm even going to put my 90-degree angle there because it was a rectangle. Now, the half of a rectangle is a triangle. So what I'm going to do, I remember for a rectangle, I will look at a 90-degree corner. I will multiply the two numbers that make that corner, and that was the area of a rectangle. Now, what I'm going to do for a triangle, I'm going to look for my 90-degree corner. I'm going to multiply those two numbers. However, the result, I'm going to divide it by 2. Okay? So again, I'm going to multiply those two measurements at the 90-degree corner, and my result, I'm going to divide it by 2. The reason why I divided by 2 is because a triangle is half of a rectangle. So let's take a look at number 7. My 90-degree corner is right there. It is made by 4.7 and 6. Again, the dotted line is for me to extend 6, so I can see that they do meet at the 90-degree corner. So for the area of this rectangle, I'm going to go 4.7 times 6. So I have to multiply those two numbers. And whatever I get, I'm going to divide this by 2. Right? I'm going to do it as a fraction. I'm going to do the dividing by 2. And again, because a triangle, it's half of a rectangle. Okay, so let's take a look. So I'm just going to go 4.7 times 6. And then that's 28.2. When I divide this by 2, I get 14.1. If we're dealing with measurements, it's kilometers. The measurements to begin with were kilometers. So I do kilometers to the second power. We call it square kilometers. But again, I'm just interested in you knowing how to do the work. Now, don't think that you have to use every measurement given. Notice how there's a 9 that I never use. I'm only going to use the two measurements that make the 90-degree corner. So let's take a look at question number 8. My 90-degree corner is right there. It is made by the number 6 and 8. So I'm just going to go 6 times 8. I know 6 times 8 will give me the area of a rectangle. But for triangles, the result, I have to divide it by 2. And again, the reason why I do it is because a triangle is half of a rectangle. We saw it on the figure at the very, very beginning of the lecture. I know 6 times 8 is 48, and 48 divided by 2 gives me 24. 24 inches squared, or people say 24 squared inches. Okay, now since we know how to do areas of triangles, let's play around a little. Find the missing measurement, round your answer to the nearest tenth. Okay, so one thing, question 7 and 8, the instructions were just find the area of each. If I have decimals, don't round. Just give the whole decimal as it is. Now for questions 9 and 10, I see that if I do get answers, I should round it to the nearest tenth, which is 1 decimal place. All right, so let me look for my 90-degree corner. It is made by 10.1 and this other measurement. I don't know what that measurement is. It has a question mark, so I'm just going to call it X. So I know that if I was figuring the area of this one, I will go 10.1 times x. So 10.1 times x divided by 2. Right, that's what I will do. Multiply the two measurements that meet at the 90-degree corner, divided by 2, and that it will equal the area. In my question here, the area is 50. Okay, so I need to solve for x. One thing, I don't want to deal with the multiplication on the top because I cannot deal with it. Right, 10.1 times x, nothing I can do. Since I see here multiplication divisions, I could probably deal with a 10.1 divided by 2, but it's going to get ugly. Probably the best thing to do will be get rid of fractions. Right? Many people don't like fractions. So what I'm going to do to get rid of fractions, I'm going to multiply both sides by the denominator. Right? The number at the bottom of the fraction. The number at the bottom of my fraction is 2. So let me multiply the left side and the right side of the equal sign. Let me multiply each of them by 2. Remember, if I separate my sides through the equal sign, I can see my two sides. So I multiply the left side and the right side by 2 because I want these 2's to cancel out. Like I said, that's going to help me get rid of fractions. So I have 10.1 times x, it's equal to 100. Right? 50 times 2 gave me 100. Now, to get x by itself, let me divide both sides by 10.1. Now, 100 divided by 10.1. According to my calculator, I get 9.90099. There's some numbers. I wrote two numbers. I only wrote the first two numbers. But my instructions say round it to the nearest tenth. So only one number. I look at my second decimal place. Big enough will be 5 or more. Okay? If it is big enough, the 0 will push the 9 over. Now, if the 9 was at the limit, which is the highest it can be, the pushing continues to the next number and then obviously to the next number. If my number is big enough, and again, big enough is 5 or more, my 0 is not big enough. When my number is not big enough, I'm just going to ignore it. So my answer in this case will be 9.9. Again, if the second decimal number is big enough, and big enough is 5 or more, it pushes the previous number up. If it is not big enough, so that means 4 or less, I'm just going to ignore it. All right, let's take a look at question number 10. Where's my 90-degree corner? It's right there. Okay, the measurements that make the 90-degree corner are 7, and this other measurement, which I don't know how big it is, which I'm calling x. So I'm just going to say 7 times x divided by 2. Don't forget to divide by 2. Okay, 7 times x divided by 2, right? With triangles, we divided by 2 because a triangle is half of a rectangle. So 7 times x divided by 2 is equal to 18.9. Now, to get rid of fractions, let me multiply both sides by 2. So I get rid of that. And that's going to give me 7 times x. It's equal to, now 18.9 times 2, I'm going to call that 37.8. Now to get x by itself, let me divide both sides by 7. Now 37.8 divided by 7 is 5.4. Okay, not bad. Don't forget to divide by 2 on the area of a triangle.